has signage, bring it into the bylaws, and put it back right there, plain circle, and cut it that way, version. But you could almost get a big piece if they built something good there. Get your money back. If you hear of a hotel, I'm going to talk to Jesus. Free to a good home. If something like that could be justified, that gets our attention. That would get my attention.
I like that site because we were down there. This is what we're really good. The hospital site. Apparently a church is behind that though. It's like 13 acres of time. Because that was on the convention center hotel site right there.
That honeycut property, that 30 acres, that was bank ended up. God, what a waste.
So we went to IKEA.
That would have been the best.
I don't like it or anything like that.
I do know. EJ Whitmore offered me that land for $600,000. That was back in the
Still trying.
You, and I don't think you could have laid out that situation worse than it got laid out. It's almost surreal.
It started off as the best piece of the line and then the West Mexico, right there at the top of the hill. Single line across. Oh my God. But it's blended itself.
That was a waste.
Summer for it, I think that people.
I'd still like to see a side street connection to Bowling Alley.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have 6 o'clock and the clock does too. So I'm going to call the meeting for May the 7th to order. First thing, I want to extend our condolences to Town Manager Summer Woodard in the loss of her grandmother this weekend. The next item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to give her a little commercial here. Lily Vitale, for a year or two, has been coming to our board meetings and is on a scholarship to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And she has just secured a internship with Congressman Mark Walker from District 6. So I'm going to ask her to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lily. Your generation's going to have to take over here in a couple of years. Glad to see you so interested in political science and government. All right, the next item is the approval of April 2nd and April the 16th Town Council minutes. Anybody have any additions, corrections, or anything for the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented. Second? Okay, all in favor? All right, does anybody have anything they want to add or subtract or whatever on tonight's town board agenda? Everybody comfortable with it? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adopt as approved.
Move it. Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. All right, we're a few minutes away from 6:05, so what I'll do, we have a couple of people signed up for the public session. Do we have anybody signed up for the public hearing? Okay, good. All right, if Ms. Taylor, if you could just give us a little report within 5 minutes. You know, the public comments limited to 5 minutes, and I have a stopwatch. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Roland, you gonna come up at the same time? Okay, I'll just combine it.
Well, yeah, we're support here.
All right.
Thank you. We are here tonight to talk about the streets. And it's not negative, okay? So it's not a negative thing. I know we have keep that horse down the road or kick that can. But one of the things that we're looking at with the streets, we meet monthly with the Heritage Association. And we are as interested as the town council is, and as well as the citizens and all the merchants about the town parking and merchants parking. We have talked numerous times to our merchants to tell them we need to keep the streets open and available for the public that's coming in, to give them a place to park. But we still are continuing to have merchants park on the street, and we don't know what to do. We are here tonight just to talk with you. We have talked among ourselves at our meeting as far as putting an ordinance in place. As far as parking, I know Highlands, they have an ordinance of employees parking on the street, or merchants parking on the street. We have had some of our merchants says, well, I stopped by for 5 seconds to drop something off. Yes, if you've got something heavy and you've got big steps that you've got to climb or whatever in the back, we can understand that. But when you're parked all day long, that leaves it for the opportunity of people that come through town that maybe that they don't parallel park or whatever, they may leave downtown. And we want to continue for our downtown to continue to grow. Downtown parking right now, the way it is, has not hurt our business. I can't speak for the other businesses. I don't know, Rolla. Has not hurt our businesses, but we're still continuing having merchants park. And so we were just asking the town if they would look at maybe some type of ordinance to put on the books to say, okay, you as a merchant, and your 5 employees cannot park on Main Street, that there's other parking available on Main Street.
And I think, and I've been looking at the Highlands ordinance and all this, I think it should be year-round and not just seasonal and I think it should be all day and not, from 10, because a lot of people will say, well, I got there at 7, and so I really think the hours need to be extended, and we could do the same ordinance Highlands has, to just change a little time and do it for the whole year and not just. But.
Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, the next item is the public hearing for special use permit for Vina Development. Is there anyone that did not get a chance to sign up that wanted to speak? Okay, Mr. Setzer, I'll just swear you and anyone else in that is going to be testifying in this matter. Okay. Like it's you and Mr. Moore.
And Mr. Zmin is the applicant to be sworn.
Does the applicant need to be sworn?
Yes.
Oh, yes, sir. You'll just come on up. I'll get you at the same time. Okay. Welcome, sir. Okay. If you just raise your right hand, gentlemen. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you give you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, gentlemen, thank you. All right, are there any conflicts of interest among the board? If there are any in this matter, please identify them at this time. No conflicts? Okay. All right, here's the order of the proceedings. We'll have testimony from our staff, Mr. Setzer. So I'm opening the public hearing and request testimony from the staff.
Good evening, Board and Mayor. We're here for tonight is a hearing for Workforce Homestead of Chapel Hill. They're requesting to construct a 60-unit, 55-plus affordable housing complex off of Siler Road. The application was filed back on February 26th. A neighborhood compatibility meeting, which was required by our special use process, was held on March the 23rd here at Town Hall. Then Planning Board also held a hearing on their regularly scheduled meeting on April the 16th to review the application and make changes and recommendations. Since the neighborhood compatibility meeting, there was 2 couples that came to the hearing that were mailed within certified letters or were mailed to all applicants within 400 feet. We had two couples that attended, and the only real issue that came from that hearing or from that meeting was one of the neighbors wanted a screen buffer along the property line, which was brought up the planning board, and the developer has added in to the drawings. The planning board met, of course, on the 16th and discussed the development. Has recommended some changes that the developer has added in. One was adding sidewalk along the Silo Road portion of the property. There's a right turning lane into the property when you're coming from the west, traveling east. Of course, they added in the screen buffer. That was a request of Miss Valentine, one of the neighbors. And the other request that I'll let Mr. Amin talk a little bit more further about was parking. Our ordinance required 1.5 space per unit. Mr. Amin requested 1 per unit, which would be 60 spaces. And I'll let him go a little more into the details of that. There's some in your packet. You'll see an exhibit from, I forget the form. What's the
qualified allocation plan of the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency.
Yeah, and in there's a section where it talks about under elderly 55 plus developments is less because you're essentially seeing less people have cars and more transit. These are the drawings and footprint of the layout. They're all 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom units. It's a 3-story building with an elevator and a covered breezeway in the front. We have discussed with Mr. Mean that the breezeway would be tall enough for ambulance and transit buses to be able to go under, so that won't be an issue. I've also got, this is the drawings of the property. I'll turn these around for everybody to see in a little while. You have these in your packet as well, just smaller scale. The site will have to be graded. It'll have a retention pond for rainwater and stormwater runoff. This one here shows all the water and sewer connections and the parking with the 60 spaces that plan board's recommended. With the handicap, there's right now currently 5 handicap spots, garbage disposal areas screened, and then the other one, this is the landscape map showing this landscaping as required as our UDO, which it meets. For the planning board, let me back this up so I can see everybody. Of course, planning board went through the findings of facts, which you'll see in your packet, recommending it, and they've got their findings where they've answered the 5 required questions by statute. That's all I can think of at this moment. I was going to let Mr. Yameen talk a little bit more about his development in more details and a little bit more about the park. If you have any questions for me.
Any questions from the board? All right. Mr. Marine? Welcome, sir. How are you?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I would like to please request that the town board approve my request for a special use permit for verbena. We were fortunate that we've got the example of indigo to look at in terms of the kind of performance and product that you would be able to expect from me. from everything I can understand, residents there at Indigo seem to be pretty happy. And I certainly have gathered that there is, from our lease-up experience at Indigo, that there's certainly a strong need and demand for additional affordable units. And in particular, with Verbena, we're going to be targeting a senior population, independent living senior population, individuals 55 years or better. One thing in particular that I want to address is the parking issue. A little bit of a wrinkle from kind of the typical application and from the experience at Verbena. And in this, I'm taking the lead of the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. Justin referenced what's known as the Qualified Allocation Plan. That's sort of the official rules and guidelines that the Housing Finance Agency establishes, and they tweak it every year, that kind of govern how the federal tax credit program is administered and the ways in which we developers need to sort of design our proposals to comply with. And when the Housing Finance Agency composes all of their details in terms of their policies, they've got their entire portfolio of over 30 years of approving multifamily housing, hundreds of developments, thousands of units to look at in terms of formulating their policy. And in particular, with regard to the parking policy for 2018 for senior developments, they are allowing, they're requiring, they are allowing 1 space per unit as opposed to 1 3/4 spaces for developments that target a family population. I would add that the Housing Finance Agency is typically pretty conservative in terms of whichever ways in which they do tweak their guidelines. They'll always kind of err on the side of taking the safer approach. And so I think it's pretty telling that for 2018 they did take the step of going to allowing 1 parking space per unit for senior developments. And that's because they've found, in reviewing their portfolio, that especially for these types of developments targeting an older population, there's just not as much of a need for parking spaces, and they want to avoid having to lay down an excess amount of asphalt, create more impervious surface than is necessary. And I know other developers are certainly welcoming that policy shift, because for previous developments, even for family projects, we're seeing that there's a lot of empty asphalt in our parking areas. So, and certainly for, again, the developments that target a senior population, not all the residents have cars. And especially as we're finding with Indigo, where we've been fortunate to include the development on the established route of the public transport system. I'm sure we'll be able to extend that to Verbena if it is approved for financing. That would be another incentive for residents not to have cars if they're ever at a point where they're looking to decide one way or the other, should I or shouldn't I. They're going to be able to have public transportation at their doorstep. So I would simply add to my request that the board please consider allowing a policy that would conform with the Housing Finance Agency policy of allowing 1 parking space per unit with this development. And I'd be glad to answer any other questions that people may have.
Parking is the request for 1 space per unit in this case based upon not having black asphalt, or is it based upon not having space to have more than 1 per unit? Do you have room on this to go more expensive if the board felt like they should?
As is the case in a lot of developments, it's really hard to define a hard and fast limit in terms of how far could I push the envelope. There's always ways you can sort of, in this case, expand the buildable area, the plateau that we're going to build on. It'll mean cutting steeper slopes. It'll mean maybe having to include retaining walls. It'll mean increasing the development budget. So yeah, I mean, from that perspective, space can be made if absolutely necessary.
The impetus is a financial issue in this matter versus an environmental issue.
It's really both. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's only a financial matter, but it certainly is. The financial matter is one of the components, and this is, after all, an affordable housing development, so we are limited in terms of the budget that I've got available to me. As part of the competitive process, one of the things we look at is to try to keep our costs reasonable with every individual kind of line item in the development budget.
Would you not allow somebody to have 2 cars?
In our leases, I'm not immediately familiar that we've got any provision that limits residents to like 1 car per household off the top of my head. I mean, I can double check that, but like I said, I don't think that's a policy. And we do hire a third-party independent management company that specializes in managing tax credit developments, and they're going to be handling all the property management. It's, of course, the folks that also are managing Indigo.
Any other?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you prefer to not be annexed and pay the additional water and sewer fees? On the application you wrote that annexation is not proposed, but annexation is possible, might even be required under our annex policy. Do you care either way, if you're annexed or if you just pay additional water and sewer fees?
Frankly, I've not crunched the numbers both ways, and ultimately I think that would sort of be a significant consideration on my part in terms of being able to answer that question. I just know that, for example, with Indigo, we chose not to go that route, so I'm feeling follow that same route with Verbena as well.
I'm just concerned the town's growing, but it's not actually growing, population-wise or general fund-wise, because the monies you're going to spend in increased water and sewer are only available to the water and sewer budget for the town of Franklin, whereas if they went into the general fund, they could be used for other things to make improvements in the town. That's my concern, that the town's providing services outside of the town, but while we are being compensated for providing water and sewer, we're limited as to what we can do with that revenue.
Let me piggyback a minute on that. Indigo, good-looking project. I haven't got deep into it, but no complaints. The individual tenants, do they pay their own water and sewer bills?
No, residents only pay electricity. The project pays water and sewer and trash collection.
Okay, and that would be similar in this?
That's right.
Okay, so I was thinking, well, you know where I was going with that one, yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to add? I didn't mean to kind of cut you off there.
No, that was about it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Are there any opponents? I don't think we have any opponents, so that's it. Okay, any additional comments you'd like to make from the staff?
Yeah, I've got 2 quick things. One, our engineer, Daniel Moore's got some items to add on some utilities. And other on the parking, the planning board had a lot of discussion on the parking on the 90 and the 60, and my recommendation was the 90 because that's what our ordinance, and then we decided to go with the 60, and we even had some discussion on even like holidays and when people are coming in, come see grandparents, so on, that would be an issue. And they still thought the the burden was it still outweighed it going with the 60. So I want to add that there was some discussion with planning board, some pretty in-depth discussion on parking, and they still wanted to go with the 60 spaces. That, though, if you have any other questions, I'm going to turn it over to Nathaniel, because he's got some items he wants to add as well. I believe some stuff he wants to submit as exhibits that you don't have in your packet.
Good evening, Mayor, Board.
Give Jeff one.
Thank you.
Okay, so what y'all have in front of you is the elevation for the sanitary sewer of Indigo. And the picture you have in front of you is taken from basically the tie-in point that ties into our system up to manhole number 2. You can see in the far upper side of that picture. When we went to look at this project to take over, to put back into our system, where the project's located is basically a swamp down there. And from our side, we would have so much trouble to provide the service that as a town we would like to provide if something were to happen for the section of line that we take over. We feel like an item to consider would be if part of Verbina's special use permit would be to add a all-weather utility road that we could get to the line from Indigo and get to the new tie-in to Verbena. Currently, both projects have a 25-foot permanent sewer easement, and we don't have to have a road all the way up for the Indigo project. Basically, we could use our trucks to get down in there with basically 300 feet of utility road and a 12-foot wide road. You're roughly 135 square yards at a construction cost of somewhere $30 to $40 a yard. You're under $5,000. So we can provide the service that we need to provide and to allow us to take the system over and feel comfortable doing so. So the two elevations are manhole 1 to manhole 3 is basically our 300 feet of easement that is already in place, that all we were asking for is a route to get through the swampy area to service the rest of the manholes in the system.
Daniel, that's the condition of the permit if development goes forward.
If the development goes forward, yes, we would like to see both developments have a way where we can provide the service we want to provide and weigh in for us, basically, at a very low cost in the long run of things.
Are we talking gravity or pump here?
This is all gravity.
You need a way to drive down to the far distant manhole in that picture.
Basically.
From both properties. Down.
Yeah.
I think that's
So, yeah,
on Mainsprings property down there, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's just really swampy down there, and we would hate to take over a part of the system that we couldn't get to. Basically, if something were to happen with a small easement, which the easement's already in place, with a small road on the easement already and some minor grading, we feel comfortable to take over those sections of line for this development and future development.
And what do you think the cost to the developer will be?
Roughly a good construction estimate is $30 a square yard for just a utility road. And if we're talking 135 square yards, we're in the $4,000 range all said and done. So, and realistically, that's a pretty high number. It'd probably be cheaper than that.
Okay, any additional questions from the board?
Mr. Yameen, what do you think?
I'm a little bit surprised. I'm just hearing about this for the first time right now. And what I'd like to say, first of all, is we at Indigo went through the formal plan review process in terms of submitting the site plan, and in particular, the plan for this off-site sewer. And it was reviewed and approved by the town. While we were installing the line, it was inspected and approved by the town. And only lately have I been learning that the issue of that the town's been raising the concern about access to the line. And my question is, why am I only hearing about it now? Why didn't I hear about it during plan approval, plan review and approval? Why didn't I hear about it during construction inspection? I'm just about done with final cost certification on this project with the Housing Finance Agency. I thought, I'd long ago closed the books on Indigo in terms of costs. So, our position has been that, the town approved this plan, signed off on it during inspections. The decision has been made, and I so have a concern about the request to come back and consider additional expenditures for that line. With regard to the special use permit for Verbena, that's a totally separate matter, and I think it's appropriate to look at providing for provisions for access to the sewer line for Verbena, but to link Indigo just seems a little inappropriate at this stage. And I guess I just would ask for clarification in terms of point to which the town, you guys would be requesting the road be built to. Are you looking for road to manhole number 1, or?
Basically, what we had looked at in prior decisions, this was my first, when we went down there to look and when we were going to accept the project, was the only time that I had found this. Now, kind of the other side of that is, this is a current picture where the work had not been completed completely. So I feel like there will have to be work done to complete this to turn it over anyway, so we'll be down there anyway. I don't think it's a big deal on your part, since you will have a crew in there that needs to have the work completed anyway, so that we can take line over and put us a small utility road in while you're down there.
Yeah, and I have contacted my general contractor, who I understand has contacted the grading contractor to come back and finish that work, because that should not have been left in that state. I just recently learned that that's the current condition, and I'm not pleased with it either. And sorry that it was left in that way. I just assumed that was finished with. But just in terms of clarification, so you're looking for an access road to manhole number 1?
Yeah,
is that it basically?
Yeah, manhole number 1, our tie-in up to basically, this is the 300 feet mark. The manhole, this is manhole 2 to manhole 3, and from this 300, from manhole 3, we can use our sewer truck to reach every other manhole. And ultimately, I want to provide the service that y'all need if there is an issue, is what we're looking at. So 300 feet of basically utility road. And we ask the same thing on the new project, if you move forward with that, to have the same. And that we will take care of those issues when inspection and construction phase comes around for those.
So your proposal is an access road to manhole number 3?
Yes, sir.
Right, okay. And your estimate is the cost would be $4,000?
Yeah, $30 a square yard construction cost. So, yeah, roughly $4,000.
Yeah. I mean, given my comments that I've previously offered, I mean, I would agree if $4,000, if you feel that's a good number. I mean, I would agree to accepting liability for up to $4,000 for providing that access to manhole number 3, if that's what the town board would like to consider. But beyond that, I feel like it would just be an inappropriate request, and I wouldn't want to try to put too much additional expense onto the Verbena budget, just in the interest of keeping it affordable, basically, and competitive with the Housing Finance Agency process.
So, Mr. Ward, do you think that would be an acceptable alternative to say a cap of no more than $4,000 expense?
Once the work is done to complete the initial project, to accept it, and then $4,000 on top, I feel like it's a good compromise for the town and the builder. For we both ultimately want the same thing. So.
Yeah. No, like I said, I can agree with that.
Okay. That would be up to the board to consider if they'd like to move forward with that. And that'd be my recommendation. That would be fine on the engineering standpoint.
Are we doing two exclusive things here? Or is this all one thing? We're trying to fix Indigo with this road.
Yeah. And we will deal in the construction phase and the inspection phase of our new development when that comes about.
Sounds like two things to me.
He has to fix the picture anyway. The construction company has to come back and fix the picture. And then we're asking him the burden of $4,000 additional for a road that we can get our town trucks to. That's on Indigo.
Yes.
And then there's a different thing going on with Verbena. Are we trying to tie these two together?
Because ultimately it will tie together. That's the goal.
If the council is so inclined, you could leave the restriction, just the condition on this conditional use permit, special use permit, to just the providing road access to the sewer outfalls for Verbena only, with the understanding that the applicant is, representing to you that he's working with the town on fixing the other issue with the outfall from Indigo. So if the council's inclined to just leave it at that and not muddy any waters, we do have that option.
But Verbena is also going to have this access road from the top following the sewer line down, right?
Right. I mean, we'll be having to install kind of a separate line connecting to, I guess, manhole number 1 from the east.
We'll have a separate set of easements, basically,
A separate set of easements, right.
to get there, but ultimately we're going to be back in the same place.
We'll want a separate all-weather road to be able to service that sewer line as well, though.
Sure. When we get all the drawings and do the final inspection, where we know where we can get to the rest of the line system, I think we can work that out at that point when that moves forward. So
that's right.
Who signs a $4,000 check? Indigo or Verbena?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're talking about Verbena here, and I don't want it to get sort of muddied and mixed up where we've got another project kind of on the back of Verbena, if at all possible. Which is kind of the complicating factor, because there's no guarantee Verbena is going to be funded. I mean, it's a very competitive process with the Housing Finance Agency. It may not ever get funded. So I just want to be clear, I don't want to make a representation that, I or Indigo will be willing to write a check for $4,000 to cut this additional access road in. I'm saying if somehow, the town wants to, craft some language to the Verbena special use permit to include an extra $4,000 to take care of access
sewer-related
Indigo
issues.
line. I don't know how you want to do that, but I mean, that's, I guess, in principle what I will agree to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I suppose if we just cover Verbena deeded access road easement to get sewer outfalls, I don't even know that we cover the $4,000. I mean, I think that just as a condition of the special use permit, just to make sure we don't have this same issue again, we'll just make sure it's dealt with here, so that there will be road access to any water and sewer in the town. Okay. So again, that's up to the council. You could take out any request for a dollar figure to be covered and just say there will be deeded road access to these water and sewer easements for Verbena.
Any other comments, questions, discussion?
Well, I mean, there's more discussion, but I don't know about questions from them.
Well,
I'm still
during the public hearing, we'll bring it back up for a vote here in a few minutes.
I'm still troubled with the parking.
I like the parking being smaller, being an environmentalist.
I tell y'all what, I think that since this is a public hearing, we need to settle down on the discussion right now among the board. And we'll bring it up here in about 2 to 3 minutes.
Fair enough.
Okay? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Moore. Thank you. All right. Being no further, I'll declare the public use permit closed. Okay, the next item of business, I don't think anybody else came in on public session. New business. All right, the first item of business is the board action on the special use permit for Verbena Development. All right, here's your chance at discussion, questions, or whatever among the board.
I guess what happens whenever there are those occasions and times where there's 80 cars there? I mean, is there spillover space? Is there, it just seems, maybe I'm old school, but it seems tight.
Okay. Anybody else on the board want to weigh in? Ms. McRae?
Go ahead, Dinah.
Got it.
I agree with Mr. Collins. My only thing to back up the 60 is the fact that it's been through numerous discussions and things with the planning board. That's my way to agree with it, is that this wasn't just brought up tonight.
This has been vetted.
Right, in other boards.
Ms. McRae?
Excuse me. Also, the fact that this recommendation is based on so much data, I think it's hard to argue with that. And so, I mean, if one day a year you have 80 cars there, are you going to build an extra 20 spaces just in case that happens? With the additional cost, the additional pavement, and the additional water running off and all of that.
At the end of the day,
Be recognized, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, go right ahead.
At the end of the day, the developer has an interest in this working and being rented into perpetuity. If he's comfortable with 60 parking places and faith that his units are going to be full and that parking won't be an issue, I'm okay with it.
Anyone else? Okay, Council, do you have a motion for the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
If everybody's through, you got something else?
60 parking places, I'm done with that. I still don't understand the annexation policy that we have in place currently and why this doesn't fall underneath that.
Well, I think our annexation policies have been pretty well dictated by the state, have they not?
Well, yes, sir, in terms of voluntary versus involuntary, which basically doesn't exist anymore. I think that what Mr. Culpepper is talking about primarily is that we have a water and sewer extension policy that talks about, and this is the whole segment under legal tonight, is to talk about what direction the town wants to take in terms of whether or not as a means of development, not only providing development for developers in the town, but also for the town itself to continue to grow as an entity. whether you want to look at, I mean, for starters, there is a water and sewer extension policy that those of you who have been working with for years, I don't know that we've maintained it well enough, and as something that we put first and foremost is something that's required for all development. So that's something I want to talk to you about. I certainly, and Ms. Culpepper, we talked earlier about how this all functions together, whether development is going to require annexation or not. In terms of special use permits, that's really not anywhere, and I don't know whether I'd have to really investigate the legality of that. Whether you can require that as a means of a special use permit, which is supposed to be a legal right to use a piece of property in the way that we've said you can in the UDO. So that's one question. The other part of it is the provision of water and sewer, because that's a service that the town runs separately as a utility. So I think we need to begin to explore that. We really want to emphasize that. And I think my answer, especially in terms of the projects in front of you right now, is I don't think we have, the town has done enough to say we're going to require developments like this, and when you tie on, yes, it's in our extension policy and we need it, you really do need to offer this for annexation. So I don't think you can add that as a requirement for this discussion and this special use permit.
Anyone else? Okay, you want to lead us into a motion that could be...
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I think first we need to have a brief discussion about the findings of fact. You have been given a proposed findings of fact based on the planning board's evaluation of this. So I want to walk through it with you and make sure there's nothing else you want to offer. A is the use of development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or promote public health, safety, and general welfare. The finding of the planning board, and if tell me if you want, council desires to add to this, their finding was yes, it's designed to address the lack of senior affordable care in Franklin. That seemed like council wants to find that as well, and that's an adequate finding. Tell me if you feel otherwise. I'm seeing consensus. The second would be there are or will be at the time they're required adequate public facilities to use or development as specified. That primarily deals with utilities, and it is there. The answer here before you is yes. I think that we should flesh that out a little bit. And what I'd propose the council say is yes, water, sewer, and other town-offered services are available to this property. Does that suit the council? C is the use of development complies with all required regulations. The planning board suggests to you, and so does the report of the town staff, is that yes, the use complies with all UDO requirements. Anything that you feel like you need to add to that finding, or does that feel adequate to the council? D, the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to be compatible with a particular neighborhood once it's located. The proposed finding for that is yes, the development is designed to blend into the neighborhood and be a small impact. That seemed like an adequate finding. And finally, E, the use of development conforms with the general plans, physical development of the town embodied in the chapter of UDO and the principles of grade, and the thoroughfare plan and the other duly adopted plans. And the proposed finding is yes, the development is to address the need for more affordable housing, as stated in principle of growth number 3. Is that adequate for the council? Okay, if then the council is in agreement with all of those findings of fact, your motion would be to approve the special use permit as presented and to adopt the findings of fact that I've just read to you.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have to consider weaving in language on the $4,000.
Oh, yeah. I think my recommendation to you, because I think it is a good point, we don't want to mix, which projects we're requiring what of. I think we'll try harder in the future to make sure that we have a good understanding about the access to utilities. That's a whole separate question. But I think just to say that deeded road access will be provided to Verbena sewer outfall is going to be sufficient. That's my recommendation to you. You certainly don't have to follow that. But
any further discussion? All right, I'll entertain the motion to adopt as, yes ma'am?
I'm going to move.
You're making the motion? Okay, good, as presented, okay. Is there a second? Second, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
And I hope it goes through, and I think we need it very badly.
Some of us are way past that 50.
Yeah, we got 2 cars too, but that's all right.
I only have one.
Okay. All right. Street closing request for Franklin and Bloom. Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight is a request from the Franklin Garden Club. They're going to be holding their annual Franklin and Bloom Festival, and they're requesting to close Phillips Street so it would connect the 2 squares on Saturday, June the 2nd from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m.
Okay, any discussion? Anybody have a problem, anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the street closing as presented. Okay, we have several. All right. All in favor? Okay. All right. Let's see here. Water and sewer allocation for Verbena development. Is that something new there that we need to discuss? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, what you have before you in your agenda packet is a letter from the proposed Verbena development. And since the town council went ahead and approved that special use permit, the next step would be to allocate, they're requesting 120 gallons per bedroom per day, and that would calculate Verbena would need a request of allocation of 10,800 gallons per day.
Okay, any discussion? Then I'll entertain the motion to accept the allocation as presented. Second? Second. All in favor? Okay. Update on Watch For Me program. Chief Adams? All right, Mr. Setzer. Sir, you can come up if you would like. This one.
I can't remember what month it was, but a few months back, we applied to enter the county into the NCDOT's Watch For Me NC program. And last week we were notified that Town of Franklin has been entered in the program. So that's a new program that will be starting here before long after we get some training for non-law enforcement staff and law enforcement. I've got a few quick items on the Watch For Me program. Each year, approximately 3,000 pedestrians and 850 bicyclists are hit by cars in North Carolina streets. Watch For Me NC is a comprehensive program run by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, NCDOT, in partnership with local communities aimed at reducing the number of pedestrian and bicycles hit and injured in crashes in vehicles. The Watch For Me program involves 2 key elements: safety and educational messages directed toward drivers, pedestrian, and bicyclists, and number 2 is high visibility enforcement efforts by area police to reduce violations of traffic safety laws. So once we go through, we get in the program, we'll have a wide variety of literature and some tools at our hand so we can have just more awareness to pedestrian and bicycle safety in Franklin. Like law enforcement will get training. We'll have pamphlets. We have options of other advertising on vehicles and bumper stickers and so on that we can do. So, and this isn't related to this, but today we had a couple months ago announced that we got a 100% grant for some bicycle helmets for East Franklin School, and the day we handed those out to the 4th grade class. So actually able to get a few extra because we didn't get them. The state didn't give us enough, but we was able to get enough extra so every kid in East Franklin was able to get a bicycle helmet today. That was with myself and the police department and the highway patrol and the active routes school coordinator, along with the school as well. So just to see the press release from DOT announcing that we were in the program, and training will start in June, and then August I believe will be for the law enforcement.
Great. Any discussion from the board? We don't need a motion or anything on this.
No, this was just an announcement that we were.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
Good job, guys.
I just noticed we're one of the only 7 in the state that got this.
Yeah, this round. There was 29 in already, so they've added 7 more. So
That's just great.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all so much. Madam Manager, we have an appropriation request from the Tourism Development Authority.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you in your packet is a couple items. The TDA voted at their April 9th meeting to request an appropriation from their reserve account in the amount of $5,000 to possibly fund upcoming festivals for fiscal year 2017-2018. And I went ahead and included in your packet some of the festivals that they're looking at possibly funding. The Tourism Development's current reserve account balance is $157,634.21. So this would just be an appropriation from their reserve account. It wouldn't be anything directly from the town, but of course they need the town board's permission to tap into that reserve.
Okay, so they are going to be funding some of our festivals.
They'll be looking at those.
That's great. Okay, you need a motion to make this appropriation unless there's further discussion from anybody. If not, I'll entertain the motion.
Make that motion.
Second? All right, have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. All in favor? Okay. Update on the minimum housing code violations on Pauline Avenue. Mr. Setzer. You have an update on the minimum housing code violation on Pauline Avenue? I'm sorry.
You did it again. I forgot I had this one on there.
It's one of those days.
Our contractors have finished the work at the 2 minimum housing sites, the one on Hillcrest and the one on Pauline Avenue. They've both been finished, and grass seed, pine straw, and I know talking to Ms. Shields, who lives beside the one on Hillcrest, the grass is already starting to grow on Hillcrest. They both had some issues just with, you never know what you're going to get into. The Pauline Avenue was steep and how steep it was, but they was able to get it clean and within budget, and Hillcrest was able to stay on our budget as well. Didn't have to go over on what the quote was. On the Hillcrest, just want to go in a little more on Hillcrest about why these things, they're always a hard situation why you do this, but sometimes why it's such a public need and public safety need. The house on Hillcrest, when the contractor got into doing it, and this one, they found in a garage, which I was never able to get into because it was so packed full of items, in between the garage and the basement of the house on Hillcrest, they were found 17 55-gallon drums of kerosene. So you can see if those homes, if something happened and they caught on fire, how much danger that could be to the neighboring residents, the fire department, and just, the whole community if something like that, caught on fire. So that's why these abandoned houses like this and cleaning them up is such a pivotal part and important issue for, all the residents in the town and public service, fire department, police, everything, because you don't know what's going to happen if you have to go there. So that was pretty shocking when you think about how much fuel that is. But you can go by and take a look at them. They look better. They're clean. The neighbors are pretty happy on Hillcrest. I know the neighbors on Pauline Avenue are happy. Some of them are interested on the next steps now. I don't know if John can talk some more on the next steps of where we go now. On we're not writing a blank check for the residents.
I do have an update on that for the council. I think when I sort of walk through a little bit what the next steps look like on this, I've been given time estimates based on what a foreclosure from start to finish looks like. If you have a more conventional sort of a lender and borrower arrangement, I think there's a much faster way to do this. And my intent at this point is to go back to Superior Court under the same jurisdiction that they granted us the lien in the property to pursue this cleanup that we did, and now ask the same court for an order to proceed with a judicial sale of the property. So I don't think I have to go back to the step one of go and file a new lawsuit. This is not new. This is part of the same lawsuit. So I think if that works and we don't run into any road bumps with that, it could be a lot shorter process. The next thing would be to go back to court and ask for an order that says proceed with your judicial sale. So it'll be a little while before I have that, but I will keep your council updated. And I'm hopeful that means we can get to a sale a lot faster than thinking we'd be in the fall sometime. But I think we can do it much faster than that.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may add to, when we first started this project, specifically the one on Pauline Avenue, we had some concerns about cost exceeding budget because there was some concern about maybe asbestos being in the home. We're proud to report back that was not the case, so we're able to stay within that original quote and not go over the threshold with that one.
Do we need any kind of motion on this, or just information?
No, it's just information that those are getting behind us.
You guys did a great job. Heather, I know it was. Any further discussion on it? Thank you, sir. All right, discussion on town council committee appointments. I asked to bring this up. Years ago, we had two board members would be on a committee, and they would go to the fire department, they would go to the police department, water, sewer. That started back when we had a town administrator. We now come under the council manager form of government, which has limited board members' abilities to go directly to departments and employees, what have you. So what I'm asking the board to do tonight is would there be any reason just to keep that old method, or could we just do away with that, having the town committees? Or for a while we were talking about making them liaisons, but that never really came to fruition either. So it's just something that we need to probably clean up a little bit, but under the council manager form of government. Anybody have any objections doing away with them?
So you don't want one of us to integrate ourselves into a department and familiarize ourselves with it?
No, you can do that. You just don't have to do it in any kind of official capacity other than being a council member.
What's the reason why don't we keep our appointments?
Well, I think there are several reasons. Number one, they started out as a committee. Then they turned into what we thought was going to be a liaison. As it is right now, any board member can go and attend any meeting without these various organizations, departments, whatever. The thing that I think that we have to remember is that everything now as far as employees and all, go through the town manager. When we went to the manager council form of government. And I just don't see any reason to have these, because if you have something you want to say, you can either go to the town manager or you can go down and talk to the employees. The thing of it is you just are not sometimes I think there was a perception that council members coming in an official capacity could come in and tell employees what to do. And that day is gone with the council manager form of government we have now.
I always had my eye set on stealing Joe's job at recreation, though.
Well, you and Joe can argue that out.
I'd like to hear from the different.
Well, that's what we're bringing it up here for.
And,
no, wait a minute. You mean from council members?
No, from
Well, we don't have the two
Chief
department
Adams
heads.
and Chief Rohr. I know Chief Rohr just was mentioned to me earlier tonight that he would like to have someone.
Well, I thought I appointed you.
No, sir.
Yes, I did.
Not officially. No, sir. I brought it up, and you
And I
were
said,
surprised that I
go
brought
ahead.
it up, and we never made anything official of it.
Well, I remember the conversation. I'm not going to argue the point. But have you attended any of the fire department meetings?
No, sir. I was never officially made
right.
liaison or
if
whatever
y'all want to keep it,
verbiage you prefer.
if y'all want to keep it, it's okay. I'm just trying to clean up some old things that no longer needed.
What openings we have now? Police and what? And then streets?
Water and sewer.
Water and sewer? Certainly it needs, I think we need to appoint people to those committees.
Well, then I want y'all to all come to me, because I'm the appointing authority on that, and tell me what committees you want to serve on. So what do? We have police, fire, water, sewer, streets, recreation. That's it.
But don't we have appointments on most of those now?
Yeah.
We do, if I may intervene,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor and Council. Currently, right now, we would have a vacancy in the fire department, and I know, Mr. McMahon, you just said you'd be interested. You would also have a vacancy in the police department, the sewer department, and the water. Streets is currently Ms. McRae. Sidewalks is currently Mr. McMahon. Ordinance review is currently Mr. Kinsey. Recreation is Mr. Collins. And then making program for progress is Mayor Scott. And then the board's EDC appointment is Mr. McRae. So you do have some vacancies.
Well, now, we do have appointments to things like Program for Progress, EDC. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I hate to use the word liaison, but I don't know a better word, to the departments. Do we really need that when any town board member can go with any kind of suggestion, as long as you don't go down there and tell somebody what they can and can't do? That's the job of the manager.
And Mr. Mayor, I agree with your assessment of how we got to the point of liaisons. I do think, and Mr. Collins, you will remember back in the day, this was when there was not a manager. When we had the administrator form, there really was direct management that needed to be done by committees, that really were kind of more like functional department heads, so we'll watch how this Coggins and goings from water and sewer go and things like that. They're problematic for a couple of reasons. I mean, if they're true committees, then they're public bodies that have to give notice of their hearings and keep minutes and go into closed session and all of that, all of those things. So liaison is the way to go in terms of ease of function. If you're going to, and if the council wants to learn about the various functions of the town that way, it's up to the council to keep that method.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor and Council, maybe what we do is continue, we call it a liaison, and it would be helpful, that way, whomever the appointee is, whether it's in the fire, that allows your manager to have a contact with a board member, where if there is something with the fire department or water and sewer, we do have that go-to point. So maybe it's more appropriate to call it a liaison.
But right now, we're still calling it a committee. All right, what's the pleasure of the board on it?
I think it's... Sorry, Mr. McRae, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I didn't see, I'm sorry.
I think we should just change the word and keep it like it is. Change the name to liaison.
All right. Okay, is that the pleasure of the board?
I think it's duly noted that we're not supposed to try to boss around the department. We're supposed to maybe just listen to them. And
Help understand their concerns.
exactly.
Okay, is that what y'all want to do? Just change it, we'll still have the committees, we just won't call it committee, we'll call it liaisons.
That'd be great.
All right, Mr. McMahon, I am officially appointing you to the fire department tonight, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Would you enter that into the record, Mr. Clerk? Thank you.
Just to clarify,
Okay.
am I to officially fill in the capacity
Right.
of liaison that Billy
You are.
had formed?
You are. And I thought that those appointments had been made.
We had discussed it, but since it was brought up tonight, I wanted to just bring it
Sure.
out.
And if there's anything that anybody wants to serve on that you're not serving on now, if you'll just let me know, we'll make the appointment, no problem whatsoever.
Well,
We'll take care of it.
that only leaves the water department and me. So by default, you wanna appoint me to
Congratulations.
that? Thank you, Mayor.
You got it. Okay. All right, takes care of that. All right, discussion on the Main Street parking and municipal parking lots. The discussion on the Main Street, I think what we'll do is let council, if you will, I have passed out before the Highlands. It seems to be the one ordinance that I found that might fit our situation about the parking on Main Street. But Chief, that's going to put y'all into kind of a situation, perhaps, if it's ever adopted, that we may have to look at patrolling people standing there all day. The thing that I would like to do, and I'm going to pass this around, the Streets of Franklin made the suggestion that our municipal lot back here be made, have a sign up there for short-term parking and visitor parking. And what I would like to do, every day right now, almost half of the parking lot is made up by people that work downtown. And there's a lot of municipal parking lots still vacant just off of Main Street. Would there be any problem? I don't think we need an ordinance or anything, just a sign that this is for visitors and short-term parking during our busy months at the end of May through the last day of October, when we have our bigger crowds, and then it goes back to winter when sometimes it's really lax and nobody's parking in the parking lot hardly. But with parking like it is and the town getting busier and busier, I think it would be a very welcoming thing if the town made the municipal lot right outside the door here for visitor and short-term parking. We did have 20-minute parking signs at one time in front of the town hall, but we only have 2 of those left.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we did. You don't remember? Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that if these folks are not parking there, they're going to be parking somewhere else, presumably municipal spot.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a belief, a consensus that this parking lot is superior for shopping than the other parking lots that we have?
Or when we run out of spaces.
Well, we're going to have, these folks are going to, all these cars have to park somewhere. So they're either going to park here or they're going to presumably park in a municipal behind.
Behind the post office.
Okay, now which one do we want to keep open more, or do we have a preference for shoppers?
Well, which one is more friendlier to the shopper?
I'm kind of asking that because, I mean...
When? Roland, what do you think? You guys, you have businesses on Main Street.
Right now, a lot of the parking in the back is taken up from Drake's. I mean, that's a lot of the parking, so there's not a lot of parking back there.
And their back, the parking lot in the back is full, basically full. Versus on this side and the one on.
Well, now I've been looking back there. There's quite a few empty spaces.
They're going to go somewhere.
Yeah. But I'm thinking, but do your customers want to have to drive around and not know that lot's there when they come up Town Hill and there's a visitor and short-term parking sign.
Sure. A lot of people don't know where to go. Then they don't know how to get to Main Street. They don't realize if there's the two little alleyways. They don't realize those alleyways are there. So coming up into Main Street, I mean, would be essential, I think. And then that way they would start at the coming up the hill and can hopefully visit the businesses along the way.
Would they do that if they had to park off Main Street in one of the municipal lots?
They may not. They may just go to that one particular store they're looking at and maybe not go and stop in at all of them or several of them.
Kind of put ourselves in the shoes of a tourist, and you come up Town Hill and all of a sudden you see a sign, visitor parking. How does that make you feel about the town that you're coming to? And we're not talking about year-round. Yes, sir.
Don't we have that now?
We don't have a sign or
It
anything.
says visitor parking lot. Yeah, we do, don't we?
No, it's just a P.
Okay. And why don't we, I mean, but I don't see many shoppers stopping there. I see them going on up Main
Well,
Street.
because they look through and they see all kind of cars parked in there already, they may just keep going.
And I'm thinking out loud, if you have never been here before and you come up Town Hill, you don't know what to expect when you get past it. Would they park there? That I don't know that they would. They might keep going, then not find one and not come back.
But we also were welcoming to the civic clubs by putting all the civic club signs on the town hall lot to make visitors feel welcome and that they have a place to go for keeping their attendance up at their civic club. But it just, to me, and I go to the streets meetings, I've been there. One thing that the streets want to do, and the success of towns, is making people feel welcome. Yes, sir.
I mean, if you're talking about a sign for this lot here, I mean, it could even say, and it could be decorative and attractive looking, and it could even say parking for downtown shops or parking to visit downtown businesses, what have you. And that way, there wouldn't be the confusion of, as Dinah pointed out, where you drive right past it, not realizing what was ahead of that available parking. I don't see a problem with it. I think it'd be visible. It's the first thing you see coming up the hill. But just like I said, make the signage, make the people aware of why they want to park there. Parking for downtown merchants, however, whatever verbiage you choose, but make them aware.
Well, I tell you, that parking lot's used. That's where the parades line up. That's where the voters come in the morning. It's well used. Yes, sir, Dave.
What Brandon said, I think there's nothing wrong with putting a sign up that says "Welcome visitors to this lot." And if people are abusing that parking space, maybe their ethics will get it to where they're not abusing it so badly. I just hesitate to put visitors only or towing enforcement like that. Just a sign that says "Welcome visitors." Come on in, and if people are abusing it, let them kind of sort themselves out.
Would you go along with visitor and short-term parking? Because a lot of people park down there to come in to pay their water bills.
Visitor and downtown parking, something along that line. Like I just hesitate to burden we're already trying to get business owners off of Main Street. I mean, they've got to park somewhere, and a lot of times the business owners are the ones that frequent downtown shops anyway, so merchants are visitors a lot of the time.
If we could try to put the sign, kind of like Brandon said, not really enforce something, see how it works.
Visitor parking welcome.
And then if it didn't work, maybe we could go back and revisit.
Would there be a problem with putting the sign up at the end of May and making it through our tourist season? And I think we still do have pretty much a season when the parking is at a premium downtown. Yes, sir.
I would expect most of these are employees of the county who are probably across the street in the old post office. We've had a gentleman's agreement over time to allow it. They probably have expanded it too much. If we put something other than visitors welcome, though, it's just going to be the same thing as telling the county they can't have any of their employees park there, period. and I'm not sure that's the message. I want to see if we can, in fact, get some more, if we start having real trouble because actual customers, after they see a sign, or patrons or shoppers, then we can go to them and say, this is just too valuable, you're going to have to go behind. I'd rather take that first step, though.
I think there was an agreement when Mr. Cade was the town manager for 3 vehicles. I thought they were for county vehicles. I don't know. Just let me ask you, we can beat this dead horse the rest of the night. Is there any council members that would like to propose that we make that parking lot more accessible and friendly to visitors to this town?
Oh, yeah.
You just mean by means of signage?
Yes. I'm not talking about an ordinance of police coming down there and
I'm in
putting
favor of that, sure.
Okay, a signed visitor.
I mean, I guess we need to hammer out the exact verbiage of the sign, but I would.
Would you work with me on that?
Sure.
But
okay,
visitors welcome, not visitors only.
Sure.
No, but I don't think I've heard only yet.
Well, but the only means, I sense this is just saying, county, you can't park there.
No. I think it's just another tool to help us bring people into town, and we do benefit from the sales tax revenues that they spend, the money they spend here. And I'll tell you what, our sales tax revenues have gone up considerably. Now, whether it had this to do with the eclipse, I don't know, but our sales tax revenues are up, and we need to do everything we can for these people on Main Street.
Can I also get the council's direction on I know we have talked about a great number, many times, about the idea of a ordinance in the style of one Highlands has about parking on Main Street. I'm more than happy to try to adapt that for you all and bring it back. Does the council want to see it? I want to give this some time, see how this works out first, and then revisit it, or?
I don't know what the pleasure of the board is, but I'm not as concerned about making it a police thing about the parking on Main Street as I am being open and friendly to the towns. But I'd like to hear from the board on just what you're saying, Councilman.
You want to hear from us now?
Sure, if you want him to pursue this further.
What I said earlier, I mean, some of your downtown merchants are some of the people that are most frequently visiting downtown businesses. So a sticker on a car is not going to work out well for a person who happens to be a downtown merchant that goes into Root and Barrel and eats lunch frequently. So I don't see it as something we need to have an ordinance for at this moment.
One of the requests we had on that parking lot was from the Root and Barrel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, John, I guess there's no. I don't sense a feeling for you to follow through on that.
Not yet. I mean, a year from now, we're still beating this.
Well, we've been beating it for way before you got on the board. Yes, Joe.
I would like to see a bigger and broader sign inviting the people who to come in.
Right. We can do that.
Rather than just that, whatever it is.
You remember the brown signs?
Yeah, I do.
That had initials in them? That's what's out there, and it has on it. So.
Anything to get them, yeah.
All right, we'll do it, yeah. If y'all don't mind me, I'll work with Brandon on that, and we'll get with our sign people.
Can we take down the P sign if we put the other one up?
Absolutely, we can.
We don't have too many signs.
All right, let's move on. We're running late here. Discussion of on mowing schedule for Whitmire property. Mr. Culpepper, you had something you wanted to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I'd like to mow it and let people go play on it.
Okay, can you come back with a plan?
I've said it a couple times. Can we not vote just to mow it this summer? Clean it up. I think we already have estimates to clean up the rubble on top, do a light cleanup and mow it and move the concrete block. And
yeah, would you be okay to hold off till we get it cleaned up and then go? Or?
I mean, I'm fine with that, but I mean, it's grass is growing pretty fast. If we're gonna mow it, we need to mow it.
When are you gonna be available to mow?
Got to do my own yard first.
Mr. Collins is volunteering.
No, that could be something that we would talk about at our next budget meeting, because obviously mowing costs money, and if we were to build it into the budget, then that might be the time to tackle it.
Okay, you okay with that? Draw us up something, what you've got. I know that some folks with the disc golf are interested.
I don't have any real plan other than let's let people go there. Like I said, I think we already have an estimate to clean up the rubble piles, $9,500.
We do.
Do we have any estimates of how much it would cost to mow?
And see, mowing, you could do in-house with the streets crew, and it's just something maybe for the council to think about. Do you want it to be on a weekly basis? Do you want bi-weekly? Just something to think about, and maybe when we do get next week and we dive into the budget, just kind of let us know from staff's perspective what you want to see up there, and we'll be glad to handle it in-house.
Fresh cut grass and people walking around.
Well, and speaking of the latter part, and sorry to always be the wet blanket, but that's what I get to do. And not having been up on the Whitmire property for a while, do we know that the cleanup of the rubble
Once that's
and
removed,
mowing
it will be
is pretty safe?
Once the rubble's removed, I think the town should feel comfortable with having individuals.
A whole lot safer than it is now.
I think you got a great idea. Just follow through with it.
I'm trying. I'm trying my
Yeah,
best.
sometimes you're very trying, like I am. So thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Okay, reappointments to town boards. Madam Manager and Councilor, I think y'all are going to make a report for us.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I might head it off. So the past month, I met with your TDA board. Your TDA board was, kind of gave them a little bit of background about how would they feel about, currently with vacancies, it's treated differently versus a reappointment. Several of the TDA members expressed that they were not in favor of that idea. They felt that if they were willing to serve as a reappointment, they kind of felt like it might make it a little political with having to try and seek a election process. I know Mr. Setzer asked a similar question to the Town Planning Board, which is also your Board of Adjustments, and they expressed a similar concern. I also reached out to the ABC store and spoke with their manager, Mr. Mason, and he did ask their board members. They cited something very similar. We have included in your agenda packet the bylaws to all three boards now. We do have those from the ABC board, and though the ABC board operates their bylaws from the state, I did follow up with that. So with that, I'm just going to kind of turn it over to Mr. Henning, but that's kind of the feedback we've gotten from the boards. I know a couple of the boards, specifically the TDA, was concerned because we do have a hard time now filling those vacancies, and the reappointments, it's great to get someone who's interested that's serving on the board to reapply. Your TDA board, for instance, they're not compensated anything. Planning board is very minimum for all the hard work they do. So with that, I'll turn that over to Mr. Henning.
And just to quickly review, and this is spelled out pretty well in the bylaws you have in front of you. By and large, the number of folks that can be appointed to these boards is set somehow or another. If it's the planning board, you set the UDO, how many people are going to be appointed from, and you have to have some representation from the ETJ area and more in town, obviously, because that's the primary planning jurisdiction. The TDA, if you all know, the local act that established it is very explicit about who has to come from what sort of industries and how many people, and there's not much you can do directly to affect that. And then there's the ABC board, and you have before you, the Summers provided you the statute that local ABC boards are established through. I say all that to say I have watched those, particularly working with the TDA and the planning board over the years. It is a big effort to get folks that are willing to show up and to really put in a lot of fairly thankless work. And those are the folks that I'm, again, as a legal perspective, I can't tell you that you can't adopt a process that says every single vacancy, every single end of a term, we're going to have a whole new, throw it open to new applications rather than just at the time of vacancies. Legally, you can. I think from a practical standpoint, I can't recommend it because I really am primarily concerned with what the message is taken home by the folks that are willing to give of their time, and that's really what it is. It's pure volunteerism to be involved in those things, and not to feel like they are especially the planning board, they get yelled at enough and not feel like they are also now going to be sort of judged before they even take those things on. I have that concern for them. The one thing in here that you do have, and it's in Article 7 of the Chapter 18B, the statutes that establish local ABC boards, and this, of all of these things, you have the most direct control over is how many folks are on the ABC board. You start out with a 3-member board, and you can opt to make that a 5-member board. That's about the most direct control you have over sort of the number of seats. And so, again, I would just urge you to be really cautious about the message that requiring as a hard and fast rule every single time we're going to require everybody to reapply for the seats that they have, sort of graciously agreed to occupy. I'm concerned about how that would be perceived.
And understood. What does it say about when there's actual vacancies? I guess, you generally get a recommendation from the existing board.
If it's a vacancy too, we advertise the
We do.
And there is a more of an application sort of process for...
Still would do it in form of an actual vacancy. We still would advertise.
Yes.
And then the board would have the final say.
Yes.
I think that's what years ago, that resolution we passed, Joe.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, let me just kind of give an example real quick. So, for instance, let's say that you had a vacancy in the TDA. You would have a report from myself, since I'm kind of their liaison to that board. I would report to the town council that there's a vacancy at TDA and ask permission to advertise that vacancy. The council would either grant or deny that process. We would advertise it through newspaper, online, on our website. And then once we get applicants, we then take those to the TDA board. The TDA board would look at those applicants, and this is in the case of a vacancy, make a recommendation from that list of applicants, and then that would come back to this board to make that final decision. That's your current how we treat vacancies.
If I might interject, I understand your fear, John. I think that's the idea of automatic reappointments, but I don't think we're supposed to automatically reappoint. It says we may reappoint them. But I think it's worth noting that the planning board, which is our board of adjustment, had, I think it was 3 applications for the alternate position. So those fears may be being placated with more people wanting to get involved recently.
And if I may, that took almost 8 months to get those 3 applicants.
Yeah.
It's for an alternate position, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we did look into that, and it's a good point. But that's the thing, is that I think Justin would tell you he really beat the bushes for that to happen. And he has done a great job of having that board more. There were several hearings that the Board of Adjustment, which is functionally the same board, had that I sat here and waited for the members, and they didn't show up, and we had to cancel it, and it was strung out. He's got that going really well, but I don't want to do anything to reverse that good work. So,
Yes, ma'am.
This isn't really the issue, but unless I've been reading it and unless I'm missing it, is there a term limit for a board on the planning board? So there's no. It keeps talking about filling the expiring terms and the procedure for filling vacancies.
No, it's set in the UDO.
They're maximum a 3-year term, and at the end of a 3-year term, they can. That's when the board can decide to, based on whether it wants to stay, to reappoint them or not to reappoint them. But there's no actual term limit. Like county planning board, where there's a max of 2 terms.
But it doesn't say the 3 years in here that I can.
The 3 years is a standard, I think, by just general statute for planning boards.
Because I noticed on the TDA, it is 3-year terms.
There are terms.
So when you talk about vacancies and expiring terms, if there's nothing in there that says their term limit is 3 years and they can only serve, I mean, a lot of boards say you can only serve, 2 3-year terms, 3. So I just didn't see that was not so much the filling the term, but how long you could serve. I mean,
and that may be another way to address what you're talking about, where it's not already mandated by law to be one way or another. You could say, no more than, you could sort of term limit them. Say we do want some new blood on occasion. After,
I mean, am I right? It's not in there.
I'd have to go look.
I mean, I looked at it at home, and then I pulled it back up because I kept thinking I was missing it.
But I apologize, I should know that. But the planning board in particular has got, there is state law, there's the UDO, and there's its own bylaws that are created under the UDO. So I don't know off the top of my head.
And we're talking about 3 different sets of rules here too.
Right.
They all have separate rules. I mean, go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm just... Okay. Yeah, let me, I have to put things in my own words. So we're saying that if someone's time is coming up on a board, they'd like to stay on there, the board would like them to stay on, then that rocks along. If we have a situation where there is an opening, that quitting or term expired and not wanting to re-up, I'm not sure why you even have to get our permission to advertise. I think that just gets advertised out there. Once we get the list, we show it to the group, the board. They can give a recommendation, but ultimately it is this board's decision.
I think that just was custom more than anything.
But is that kind of what...
It'd be cleaner to do it that way.
Yeah,
If the
it would
board
be.
wanted to set that policy for
Yeah.
vacancies, because currently the policy we've operated on is to do that step to ask permission. But I certainly see your point.
Yeah.
And I do think it would be good for the council to have some written policies that we do. I mean, I think we have written a lot of this on the wind many times. And the city of Asheville has got a boards and commissions policy manual. It's like this. I mean, we don't need to go there, but it would be good to have have it sort of, more.
Can we not solicit applications at year-round for positions, even if there's not one open, and we have a pool of at least willing applicants that were at one time willing to serve on a board?
I mean, you certainly could. I mean, anyone who would be interested, in serving in case there was a vacancy or someone, had to step down for any reason, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have a pool to where you could pull that list
Just
and
put it
say,
on the website.
this was a candidate. That certainly wouldn't be an issue.
The TDA, though, has to meet certain classifications to serve. That's set by state.
It is. That one's a little bit harder, but the other, it certainly wouldn't hurt to do
You have
that.
to be from a hotel or something. That's all kind. Okay, anything else on this while we move on?
Mr. Mayor and Council, if we may, why don't Mr. Henning and I work together and kind of actually come back next month, since we've kind of discussed this, kind of got a feel from the board now, and actually put in writing, so we'll have in minutes like a policy of what we really do for vacancies, and we'll take what Mr. Collins suggested about having to come for permission, we'll take that out, if that's the will of the board. We can work on that.
All okay with that?
Would you look at that about the planning board just to see, because it doesn't appear to be, understand state, but it doesn't appear to be in their local to see when there could be a term.
Okay, we're going to do that. Okay.
And one last point before we go. In filling expiring terms, it says the land use administrator shall so inform the Board of Aldermen that the expiring term is coming up. The Board of Aldermen, which is council members now, may reappoint the member. We're under no obligation just because somebody is willing to serve again to reappoint them. Again, that goes back to if we had a pool of willing applicants, we would have a better decision-making process.
Y'all take that into consideration?
We certainly can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is the big one here. Proposed fiscal year 2018-2019 Town of Franklin budget. Madam Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, and I'll ask Mr. Talent if he doesn't care to pass the budget he has out to the news media as well. We've went ahead and distributed, there's notebooks around each of your tables. kind of a breakdown, just so you'll kind of be aware of the notebook. You've got your proposed budget along with the manager's message. You've got revenues, what revenues look like for your funds. Keep in mind you have a general fund, which is ran strictly from your ad valorem tax. You also have your fire tax, which is from your fire tax base. And you also have your water and sewer, which is based off of your utility fees. And then the final fund, of course, is your TDA, which is based off from occupancy. Your next section in your notebooks is for expenditures. It kind of shows a breakdown of where the expenditures are within each department. And then the very back is the supplemental information. It gives you an idea of water and sewer proposal rates for upcoming fiscal year 18-19. And it also includes the consumer price index, so the board can kind of see from a COLA perspective what would or would not be appropriate for this upcoming year. But with that, if the board would just take some time and take this home the next week or so and just review this, I would like to thank Ms. Doster for all of her time. She's put a lot of time and effort into this budget. And this budget wouldn't be possible as well without your cooperation from your department heads. So with the department heads and your finance officer, a sincere thank you for their hard work. They've worked on this for at least 3 or 4 months, day and night, and it's proudly that we present this to you tonight.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm very proud of the work that you guys did. This was, I've seen a lot of budgets, but I'm not going to say it's the best budget, but it's the best done budget I've ever seen. And what I would like to ask the board to do is to take this and study. We're going to be meeting not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. Is that at 5:30?
It would actually, it would be at 5:30, yes, sir.
Right now, just based on a cursory look, we have 3 choices you need to look at. Take this budget, look at it, and then look at the things. Are we going to have to raise the tax rate? Are we just going to leave it like it is and let everybody do more with less? Are we going to go through the budget and if we need to and make cuts? Look at it from the standpoint of if we do have to make cuts, where you would recommend we make cuts. So basically that's that. We'll discuss it at the Tuesday meeting. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of everything.
And Mr. Mayor, before you
ma'am.
move forward, if I may ask from the town council tonight, if they would please make a motion to acknowledge receipt that the budget's been presented to you.
We're legally bound to do that.
Yes, sir.
May I have a motion? Joe
I make a motion that we acknowledge receipt of the budget.
Okay, all in favor? All right. Okay, the next item is, because we set the budget work session for May the 15th at 5:30, and public hearing for the fiscal year Town of Franklin budget for Monday, June the 4th. All right. Counselor, I believe you're up next, sir.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, I think we do need a motion and a vote to set both that work session and the public hearing.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to set both of those at the same motion.
Make the motion to set both the work session and the public hearing as proposed.
The second. All right, all in favor? Okay, good. Mr. Counselor?
Mr. Mayor, under Legal 8A, I want to tell you a little bit about the ordinance before I ask you to set a public hearing on it. In front of you is an ordinance, and it's entitled Adopting Certain Amendments to UDO for the town to provide for regulation and placement of utilities. As you all recall from our discussion about small cell in particular, that has prompted us to make sure that we're ready to evenly deal in a non-discriminatory fashion with all providers of utility services, that they all have to do the same sorts of things with their facilities and utility lines. So the purpose of this ordinance is to do that, to go ahead and require. It basically addresses all kinds of utilities. The one exception for utilities that we find in here is it does not try to regulate electrical over 115 kilovolt because that's set out in state law very clearly. So it is up to the Utilities Commission. It's not a thing that can be regulated at a local level, except by sort of expression of your wishes. So it'll be in there too. So before, and we'll have more discussion about this ordinance and what it means for water and sewer annexations or extensions, but first I need to ask you to set a public hearing on this ordinance for June the 4th, 2018 at 6:10.
6:10?
Yes, sir.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Something that's interesting while we're talking about broadband and all, statewide, I don't have the figures that I heard, but statewide towns are losing money all over the place because people are doing away with their landline telephones. Interesting.
A couple of cord cutters.
Yes.
Am I understanding correctly, this is an existing ordinance that we're proposing changes to? What am I looking at here?
Okay, so where this comes from is a section in the UDO, section 152.052D2 is the part that says when you come for a development permit, and that's for basically any change in land use that happens in the town, theoretically every single one of them and any special use has to first come to the land use administrator with a development plan that shows what you're doing, sort of where things are going to go, where your buffers are going to be, make sure you comply with the setbacks. You know, it's basically anything that's required of a development in the UDO. So the next step in trying to determine, and this is where other municipalities have chosen to insert this thing about utility undergrounding, is to say, when you come for a development permit, we need to see where you're going to set out your utilities. That basically we're going to require them in general to be underground. That sounds like a sweeping comment, but I want you all to know, and that's one of the things that I know is going to come up is, are we really going to require that of each and every kind of development that ever comes through? And the answer to that is already in these list of things that's required in the development plan, the land use administrator has the authority to relax those where he deems appropriate. And so I think they're already being relaxed in most respects for like a single family, one residential house development that comes in. Justin has the authority to say, you don't have to underground every single thing that's going to come to your property. But contrast that with a planned unit development that's like 500 single family dwellings. This would be a part of the requirement because we're starting to say we want everything to be underground to the extent possible. You all have the ability to say we want to exempt residential from that altogether if you want to. This is something. This is before the planning board at the moment. They have not come back with a recommendation yet, and they'll meet again this month to talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about a practical application. Something like this roundabout project that's going on.
Wait just a minute. Is that what we need to be discussing about tonight? The roundabout utilities? I'm just not sure.
I think it's an example of how this ordinance, and this is, I mean, there's no reason to hide it. That is the consideration of drafting this ordinance, is whether or not it could apply to those things that go on right now. So I think it's germane.
Go ahead with your question.
So this dictates large projects as well as small projects.
It does in the sense, and this is something that we need to discuss some more. I think that we have been hesitant. You know, I feel like we've been really hammering the flies and missing the pterodactyls. I don't think that we've done enough to consider whether we need to be requiring like a land development permit for a big utility project that goes everywhere and crosses many different lines. That is development under the UDO. But we are used to the mindset of each and every person who owns a piece of property and comes in to put a house on it or a business or whatever. That's the kind of thing we're trying to regulate. It's really both. As to the trick about the roundabouts is that primarily the concern there is electricity, and I mean, now tell me if I'm wrong, but it's the siting of electricity. And I think by and large, it's going to be out of our hands because if there are transmission lines that are over 115 kilovolt, which I think is anything, I don't know, I'm no electrician, but any larger transmission line is going to be over that and will be permitted by the Utilities Commission.
Is that language we can put in? We can say, we're encouraging during the process, the scope of work, for you to consider burying these power lines, even if they're high-power lines. I mean, is that a policy we can have in place of encouraging or asking before the scope of work is complete to go ahead and look at burying this stuff?
As to everything except electrical, this is a requirement and subject to relaxation if the land use administrator thinks it should be relaxed, and would be required for all of that. As far as electrical, the way that it works is if the Utilities Commission is supposed to send sends a questionnaire to the locality where a big project's going in that says, do you have local regulation that would say to do this or that? It's sort of like the ABC, the state ABC board, when it gets an application for a permit, they're not bound to grant them only where your UDO says bar, but they do ask and they do take it into consideration. So I think they would take something like this and say, oh, they're trying to direct these things to go underground. Theoretically, they could require it. I don't know in practice that actually happens too much.
But we can still ask.
This is how you ask. And this is, they still ask the locality, and you can still have your policy that says, and that's the most you can do with those bigger lines is encourage it to be located underground.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you got a discussion on the water and sewer annexation policy.
Did we have? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I think we did. We set a hearing.
Yeah, I thought we.
Yes, sir. I apologize. So where this conversation ties in with, I think the council has talked on occasion about whether or not you want to really begin to require, as a means of growth, either parties that are trying to develop within the planning jurisdiction. If they're going to tie on to, well, for one, and what this ordinance does as drafted, if you look in that first section, it would be number 11, water main, sanitary sewers, etc. When town water and sanitary sewer lines are available, will be made available within 300 feet of any site. They have to show in their, and what this expression is that we're asking any property development that can tie on reasonably within 300 feet to show in their preliminary plan how they're going to do that within 4 months. So what this would do, and again, we did this just as part of the undergrounding of utilities discussion, is say, okay, everybody who is within the town or the ETJ where this applies, if you can tie on, you need to, and you will become our utility customer. That we need to resolve what we want to do with the notion that is in the sewer extension policy that says if you are tying on, if you are running an extension, and it does say this, like I said in the discussion about the special use permit, I don't think we have put it out forefront that we really mean if you are going to tie onto our system, you have to agree to annex it, voluntarily annex in. I think that, and what I've talked to your manager about doing and trying to bring back to you at your next meeting is some numbers that will make sense of this, because I think, we have always treated it as a wash if a party wants to, if they're outside of the town limits, and we say, well, they could annex in, or they could stay outside and pay double the utility rates. And we always treated that as just a wash. And I'm not sure that it is, and it may just all depend on how big a piece of property you're talking about and what kind of use. We need to really drill down on that, because I think, a single family dwelling that's going to run a small, couple of service lines, there's not enough tax value in that to say you have to annex in necessarily. We probably do better as a business to say just stay outside and pay double your utility rates. But if it's a huge development, that's a whole lot of tax base you're passing up for water and sewer revenues that come in. The problem with them is they're limited in what they can be used for. They come into water and sewer and they can't come over to your general use. So you can only get at that with your tax base.
Is it not disingenuous as a town to increase the size of your town by offering public services to people who have no vote or anything like that? They're still getting town services, you're getting town water, town sewer, but the town's not actually growing. I mean, we're not changing our demographic base, which we probably need to on paper.
So, in terms of using it to grow, after the end of involuntary forced annexation, it's about the only way to grow. I don't think, and we've said for years, we need to start looking at how to use it to grow. And I agree with you that maybe that the prevailing, we need to examine it, but maybe the prevailing thought is if we're actually going to grow the limits of this town, then we need to favor annexation, and that may be what we need to really emphasize. I agree with you. I think the reason to favor annexation is not just it builds the tax base, but it also gives those people who,
but it makes it so
come in for services a vote in the town as well.
The paper picture of this town would look much more like the physical picture of this town if everybody that got city water and city sewer were actually town residents. Right now on paper we don't look like much of a town, but we're servicing a lot of people as a town.
Yeah. I think, and one wrinkle in that, though, that I think we'll have to look at is that presumes what you bring in and annexes in is residential. So, I mean, all of these commercial things, whoever owns a commercial development doesn't get a vote just because they own it. They have to reside. So, I don't know. But my thought is, and I just want to have this discussion and carry it on to next month, is to have to work with Kyra on some numbers of what does it really mean to say, do we want you to annex in or do we want you to tie on each other?
Further, the commercial would add to our demographic data, though, too. I mean, square footage of retail space within the corporate town limits, that is not a useless fact.
No.
Right? That's useful data.
Yes, and not, you're getting into the democratic, representation part of it. There's a tax base for that. That's probably more helpful to have useful commercial space than even residential.
Okay. Well, we're getting away somewhat from the policy of the areas right here.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, I really didn't expect us to have any conclusion tonight other than these are much bigger ticket items to try to figure out how the town wants to approach, then we can just take an ordinance to the planning board and bring it back to you all to think about it. I think this is going to take us several, months to figure out. The part of that may be that when we come back, we may remove the part of this ordinance that says you have to tie on within so many feet until we figure out what does it mean. If you tie on, does that mean you also have to annex in? Are we really going to say both of those things, or what's our priority? So I just wanted to get you all thinking about it and to have more discussion.
You want to get into the water and sewer extension policy?
That's sort of all of a piece, because the water and sewer policy does say, and to point that out, you're right, Mr. Mayor, I need to point that out to you. If you're talking about outside of the town limits already, page 4 of the extension policy says if it's contiguous to the municipal limits and meets the requirements, contiguous or not contiguous, but also meeting the satellite annexation requirements, then we're requiring them to also voluntarily annex in. And our satellite annexation requirements are pretty low anymore because a couple of years ago we got a local act that said you can ignore these old subdivisions that aren't really subdivisions anymore, and you don't have to worry about this boundary limit that we've had in the past. It's just going to be down to whether or not the council thinks it's wise to add a piece of property as a satellite. So that is part of this whole same discussion about where our priorities are. So no action tonight, just discussion.
Okay, anything else? Okay, that pretty much starting to get into wind us up. Let's go around the table. Ms. Kim, do you have anything? Mr. McMahon?
No, sir.
Mr. McGray?
I'd just like to say I was so impressed with the movie, the way the movie went Friday night. It seemed like everybody was really having a great time, and it was a lovely evening. Good job.
We really lucked out on this. Ms.
She did good on
Culpepper?
No, sir.
Mr. Collins?
Pass.
Okay. All right, everybody. Two announcements. Town Council Budget Work Session. We've already mentioned it. Tuesday, May 15th, 5:30. Town Hall offices will be closed Monday, May 28th, in observance of Memorial Day. Being no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
All right. Good. Good times and good oldies. That's right.
You know, I thought when we got the...
Mow the grass and go to town. That's all I want to do.
I swear you had seen the generator.
And get some breath There's no reason to have It's nice up there. I mean, I think the kids up there pretty frequently.
Turning the page.
Hey, if nothing else, let people use it until a resolution.
Able to get in there. I'll tell you why, because
See, Joe.
Hey, Joe. And look, it's light outside.
and I was just too close to it.
Thanks for coming. Crossing 2 mountains to come hang out with us.
It was hailing when I came across Cowie Mountain.
Was it really? That was the bunch of
Yes.
When you come in, I didn't see you.
She's been here.
I got here since.
For the whole thing.
Sitting there.
What do you do, Glenn?
But it hailed. So I got off the mountain and started out.
Yeah, there was a series of accidents there around 7:30.
Yeah, I would believe it.
I'm ready for bed. I don't know about y'all. Good job. Woohoo!